bored yet? Oh, I'm so bored. Oh, I'm just so bored. G'day again, guys, and thank you for joining me. So, the piece I'm drawing today was not the piece that I intended to draw. I had an idea in my head of what I wanted. I was going to draw a tiger. I haven't done one of those in years. And I was really excited. I had a good idea what kind of pose I wanted. I had a good idea what kind of background I wanted. So with all of these things buzzing around my mind, I headed on over to wildlifereferencephotos.com, really my first stop for any sort of wildlife photos, and I started scrolling through the pictures that they had available. Really going through all of the tigers, picking them out, getting really excited about which ones I might use. I found a couple that I liked, so I got the little subscription. Now on wildlifereferencephotos.com, you do get a better price if you get 5 photos at once. So, of course, I was going to have another look around at some of the other photos, things I might use for another day. And then I saw this particular photo. Now, this picture is of a chimpanzee in the absolute perfect pose I think that we've all felt at some time during all of this isolation. He looks so bored, just so done with it. I think he looks the same way that we've all looked lately after a 6-hour Netflix marathon, after you've finally submitted and watched The Tiger King like everybody bloody else. This is the way we look when the only time you can leave the house is for work. Work and home, and work and home, and television. And that's for those of us lucky enough to still be able to go to work. For many of us, it's just home. Home and home and home, just staring at the same bloody walls and flicking through the same channels, endlessly trying to find something to entertain. When I saw this picture of this chimpanzee, all I could see was those feelings all wrapped up in one big parcel of perfect boredom, and I just had to draw him. Now, something I didn't expect when I started drawing this piece was just how challenging drawing his face would be. As I created the eyes and I put all of that down, I started to realise just how similar to a human portrait this particular section of his face was. And I realised I was going to have to be super accurate to keep his expression that same neutral, bored sort of look that he has that really drew me to this piece. When you're drawing a human portrait, you do have to be just absolutely laser pinpoint accurate to not change the expression on somebody's face. We're so accustomed to reading these lines, it really doesn't take much to change the meaning of the expression. And I really did find that making sure that I got all of those wrinkles around the eyes just spot on was really going to make a difference to the overall effect to this piece. Another challenge that I faced putting his face down was the angle that I had drawn this down on. Now, usually if I was drawing a portrait, I would have the face facing straight on or in a upwards, you know, where the chin's at the bottom of the page and the forehead's at the top of the page somehow. But drawing the face on this horizontal angle, I really did struggle to make sure that I kept all of the perspective right and kept everything in the right place. Now, what I could have done at this point would be to turn the piece of paper around so that I was working on that face in a sort of more natural direction. But the length of this piece meant that it was hanging off my desk in a way that I really didn't feel comfortable. I really didn't want to bend the paper just so I could have the face, you know, facing the right way. So I just kind of sucked it up and worked on that face horizontally. It was challenging, but I did get there in the end. Another challenge that I had was drawing that sort of more wiry, sparse fur on his skin. I haven't really drawn fur like this before. Most of the animals that I draw are nice and fluffy, and you can't see the skin through the fur. But in this case, you really can see a lot of the skin of his fur and on his arm. And I did have to put down a layer of skin tone first and then build up layers of the fur texture on top of that skin base. Because that fur texture was so sparse, I did have to be extra careful to make sure that every single line was going in the right direction, because even the slightest flick of hair in the wrong direction wasn't really going to be able to be hidden later on. So I really did slow down and take my time to make sure that I wasn't rushing things and I was consciously putting down each pencil stroke. I find it all too easy to zone out into a piece, and every now and then I do flick a fur off into the wrong direction. Usually I can cover that up later on with, more layers, but in this case I wasn't going to be adding those layers and I wasn't going to be able to blend out any mistakes, so I did have to really rein myself in and just take that extra time. Another huge challenge in this piece was the way the fur really changed direction on his arm, especially in his armpit. I've never thought about what a chimpanzee's armpit looks like before. I've really never studied it, but oh my goodness, the hair really does fly in every which direction. And this was another time that I really did have to just slow down, make my marks deliberately, and just really pay attention to that reference photo, because if I didn't get those hairs in the right place, it wasn't going to look like an armpit. It was really going to start looking a bit, scruffy and just not right. So I put down a layer of a light grey pencil first. You might be able to see that down on the page now. So I could plot out in advance what direction the hair was going in each place. And then I slowly built up layers of colour, just taking my time, trying not to rush. Very, very hard for me. I really do like to rush. I really like to just, race on ahead. But this was one of those cases that I really, really, really did have to slow down and pay attention. As I was getting down to the bottom of his arm, I was starting to get a little bit worried, because I've got a big old hand in this piece. Now, as an artist, I must admit I have spent my entire artistic life avoiding drawing hands. They are a subject that intimidates me greatly. I did a whole 30-day drawing hands sketchbook, which did help me a lot, but still I do worry. They're a very complicated little, they're so handy. And chimpanzee's hand, not much different. Still a lot of joints, still a lot of things going on. I approached drawing this the same as I would a human hand, just really breaking down the shapes as much as I could. I'm trying to sort of see how they sit in relation to each other, and just slowing down and trying not to panic. I approached drawing these hands the same way I did the skin on his chest, where I got down a base layer of a skin tone first, and I really plotted out where the joints and that were going to be, even though most of them were going to be covered up by the fur going forward. It did give me a base to see where clumps and clusters of hair may be joining up on his hand, and it really did help to just have that little bit of a guideline down first. You can see the stick in his hand was one that I just pulled out of the garden. Nothing special. But I did want him to be focusing sort of aimlessly on something, and this little butterfly on the end of the stick ended up being the star of the show here. Now, this butterfly here was based on some of the blue tiger butterflies. We've just had this massive migration that went past my area. The sky was absolutely thick with these, like thousands and thousands of these blue and black butterflies. Absolutely beautiful. So I this is only small, so I didn't do an absolutely perfect sort of rendition of the butterfly. I did have to drop out a lot of details so that he actually fit. He's only about 4 centimeters high. But I really wanted to get a little bit of detail in there, so you can see I'm working on getting in some purples and some, I used the Caput Mortuum, however you say that, pencil, just to give those blacks in his wing a lot of variation. Doesn't really translate very well in this video. It's a little hard to see how many different colors are in the wings of this little butterfly, but I did put in as much variation as I could with his little tiny size. finally, I moved on to using my brush and pencil touch-up texture and titanium white mixture to add a few little white hairs on his chin, a few little white hairs, white spots on the butterfly, and with those final little touches, this guy was just about done. So here's the final piece. Now this one was a little bit tricky to get a photograph of because of the size. That 60 by 30 centimeters sort of meant that I did have to stand up on a chair on the table to get the photo, but I really do like the way this one turned out. I think he might be one of my favorites so far. I really do think he captures the feeling of boredom, which is something I think a lot of us can relate to right now, and I'm really super proud of this piece. I would just like to take a moment to thank my patrons. Up available for you guys now is a real-time recording of how I drew the little butterfly in this piece, so I hope you'll pop on over and enjoy that. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I also hope that you are well and healthy and safe at home. We might all be going a little crazy right now, but we will get through this, even if we have to spend a few hours looking like our little chimpanzee friend here. Please leave a like or a comment if you have enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear what you've been getting up to while you've been passing the time. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys real soon. Bye guys.